Thank you for joining us. You're listening to the Write Project podcast and radio program. This is a show about writing and modern Newfoundland author culture. This program is produced and recorded at CHMR FM 93.5 FM in St. John's, Newfoundland and Labrador, and is aired on other great stations in the province and elsewhere in the country. It can also be heard online at www.chmr.ca. I'm your host, Matthew LeDrew, author of the Xander Drew series and founder at Engine Books. Let's see what we have today.
Okay, well, thank you for joining us for another episode of the Write Project podcast. This one is extremely special. I know I say that they are all special, but this one really is for sure. We are on the line with AF Stewart, the author of many, many books, including Killers and Demons, Chronicles of the Undead, Ghosts of the Sea Moon, Ruined City, Shadows of Poetry. Her latest is Poetry of Monsters and Madness, which is her third horror poetry book. We're very excited to have her on the line here. Thank you for joining us, AF.
Oh, well, it's a pleasure to be here.
Wonderful, wonderful. Tell me about horror poetry, because I love horror and I love poetry, but I don't know anything about the world of horror poetry, aside from like Poe, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's basically in the same vein as Poe. It's just you take horror and you turn it into poetry. I got involved in it through Twitter, actually. There used to be a hashtag on Twitter, horror haikus Tuesday, something like that. I can't pronounce it. But and we used to do like little horror haikus. So you take the haiku and you turn it into little horror poem, and so that was kind of fun. And Jeanette Andromeda, who's a horror artist and author, used to run it, and she would post art prompts for it, and we'd take the art prompt, write a little horror haiku, post it on Twitter, and it was just for fun. But then I had all these horror haikus piling up, so I did 2 books of them, and then I started to write other horror poems as well, and so I wrote this one. It's the first part of this book is all about monsters, vampires, and there's one about a banshee, headless horseman, and the second is sort of like madness, little Lovecraft, a little serial killer madness, stuff like that.
Interesting. Okay, that's super cool. You've got a lot of cool influences. You write science fiction and fantasy and horror and poetry, like influences like Ray Bradbury and Harlan Ellison and all that kind of stuff. That's really cool stuff. I've read some of your work, and it's extremely. It definitely fits in with that vein, like the classics of the 3 genres kind of thing. Do you have a favorite genre to write in, or do you just bounce around?
Well, probably horror is my favorite genre to write in, because I seem to like killing off characters. It seems to be a thing with me, so it fits better into the horror. But usually even my horror has some sort of fantasy element into it, because I really love mythology and folklore, so I generally mix that into most of my writing in some form. And the science fiction, though, was not, I don't do too much of that. Most of that I leave to my little drabbles I post on my website. And most of that's kind of absurd science fiction. It's like virtual reality series I've got going. We've had zombie cows, zombie penguins. and my favorite is Debbie, the time sheep who ate ninjas. Apparently I freaked someone out with that.
Debbie, the time sheep that ate ninjas?
Yes.
Okay. That's a sentence that I never expected to happen. The human language is amazing, isn't it?
It makes perfect sense within the context of the story, though. I will say that.
Okay. I like it. That is interesting. You've got a ton of just wonderful and weird and lovely material out there that for people to check out. That's wonderful. Love it. AF Stewart, what is a book you remember that made you cry?
Well, there's a couple, but the one that sticks out mostly is Where the Red Fern Grows, because that one's very emotional, and it's got a couple of gut punches in it, actually, for me.
Please explain this book to me, because everyone seems to have read this book and I have never read it. And I don't know how I missed it, but like what's happening with this book?
It's kind of a coming of age story set in the Ozark Mountains. So it's a very rural, sort of, I hesitate to say poverty, but it kind of is, but you don't really get that sense when you read it. It's more of like this rural area, this boy who saves up his money, buys these two coonhound dogs, and goes into the world of coon hunting, which was popular back in the day in the Ozarks. It may still be, for all I know. I don't
Probably
know too
is,
much
yeah.
about the Ozarks in general, but it's more of like this, the relationship between the boy and his dogs. I mean, as an adult, you look at it, it's sort of like, yeah, they're hunting coons and stuff, and maybe that's not such a good thing now when you're looking back at it. But when you're in the story, you don't really think about that part of it, because
Okay.
it's all about the boy, his dogs, the relationship, and it's him growing up and facing certain things. And it doesn't cut any punches in the book. There's a lot of bad stuff that happens as well. As I don't want to give any spoilers to people who haven't read the book, but there's one scene in particular, there's one chapter in particular, like most people will tell you the ending, because the ending is very tragic and very sad.
Yeah.
But the scene that got me more was the scene where he's been challenged by two of the other boys that he knows, two other coon hunters, to hunt down the ghost coon.
Okay.
And he finds because he's been bragging about his dogs, how good they are. You know how boys are.
Yeah.
And so he's hunting down this coon, and he finds it, he treats it, but he doesn't want to kill it because he has a certain amount of respect for this old wily coon. And then this fight ensues with him and the other boys, and something very bad happens. But that's the scene that always gets me, and I generally skip that when I reread it, although I haven't read it in a year or so, because that particular chapter has one very well written but very graphic scene in it that always got to me. So I generally, that's the one scene that I really hit me home with the emotional, because it's kind of like random tragedy in it. So
why is this book given to so many young people to read? Like, most people that are on this program read it in school. Why? Why? What's happening?
It sounds bad, but it's not really. It's actually a very uplifting story. I mean, bad things happen in the book, sure, but in a lot of ways, it's a very uplifting story and a very heartwarming love story between a boy and dogs.
Okay. It sounds.
But actually, I would think that Lord of the Flies is a much worse book to give to children at school than Where the Red Fern Grows, because I mean that one scarred me for life. That's where Lord of the Flies, whereas Where the Red Fern Grows, I've read it like, I don't know, a dozen times or so.
Not invalid. That's interesting to compare the two, because like I was about to say, Lord of the Flies kind of prepares you for society a little bit. It's like, okay, you've been here, like, protected by your parents. I don't think you understand. Society sucks, and we haven't told you. Here's Lord of the Flies. It'll explain. Like, yeah.
Unless you're a very shy person who wears glasses and you identify with Piggy, and then it will scare the crap out of you.
Yes. But it sounds like Where the Red Fern Grows might be about like mortality and mutability. And in some ways, like I always say that like owning a dog or an animal when you're young is almost about mortality, because it's something that, barring a tragic accident, like if you own an animal in your youth, you will definitely outlive that animal. It's one of the few relationships in a person's life where you're like, there is with a degree of certainty, I will have to bury this thing. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's a lot of people's first experience with death is with a pet. So I guess it's about like learning about death. You know what I mean? In a way.
There is a lot of that too. There's a lot of overcoming hardship in it too. There's an underlying theme about overcoming hardship and preconceptions, and also, kind of a bias, because I mean, he's the poor rural kid, and he also, part of the book, he enters this like big time hunting contest, so he kind of has to overcome preconceptions and stuff like that as well. And it's really a lot of interesting deep themes in the book too as well. So
sounds like I'm gonna have to read this book, is what I'm learning, is that like this seems like a formative thing. I feel like I've missed something. I feel like, because every author that's on here, it seems like has had a formative experience with this book, and I'm just sitting here like, what? Like I like for the first few times I kept calling it Between Two Ferns, like the Zach Galifianakis show, because where the red fern grows. Like I don't know how I missed it. I don't know what's up, but I feel like I need to read this book.
Yeah, well, the title actually makes sense when you reach the ending, because he ties the title into the ending. So
I'm assuming that's where he buries the dogs.
But there's more to the symbolism of the red fern.
Okay. Interesting. Would you recommend this? Do you recommend this to young people? Do you recommend that people read this, or is this one of those, like, because some people that have been on the show were like, no, nobody touch this book.
I'd recommend people read it. I mean, I might be careful about if you're young, like for younger readers. I mean, I think I read it the first time I was like early teens. So it's been a while since it's been a while since so I can't remember exactly when I read it first, and I've read it so many times afterwards, because it was one of my favorite rereads, to be honest.
Wow. So. Okay. Wow, that's high praise. Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much. AF Stewart, what is your favorite comic book character or comic book graphic novel or something like that?
Oh, that's an easy one. Batman.
Why? I love Batman. But why?
I love the psychology of Batman. Because it's dark and it's brooding and it's like totally twisted and messed up.
Yep.
And Batman and Joker are kind of like the opposite sides of the same coin in a way. And the dichotomy of it, and it's just a fascinating. And they've done so many different things with the character too, because if you read some of the graphic novels, I mean, they've done a steampunk version, they did almost a straight up dark horror version of Batman. I can't remember what the title of the graphic
Red
novel.
Rain.
It was, this one was set in Alaska or up
in
the northern. Yeah, it was kind of like a dark, sort of almost like a folklore horror thing.
Interesting.
I can't remember what the title of the graphic novel was, but it was fascinating. I have it somewhere in my comic book collection, but that is very large.
Yeah, I do like Batman. Batman's a very what I like most about Batman, I think, is that he works as a superhero, but also like if like in a different universe where superhero comics didn't take off, like say detective comics were the big thing, I think Batman would still exist. Like he almost works better when there aren't superpowered people running around. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yep. And that's another thing I like, because it's about, in a lot of ways, Batman's about the intelligence as opposed to the power side of it. Because I mean, he really has no powers. It's all his brain and the inventions and the tech and stuff. So I like that side of it too. It's sort of like Sherlock Holmes. Sherlock Holmes was a superhero.
Sherlock Holmes, if Sherlock Holmes was a bit more disturbed, if he was like, what if I dressed up like a bat? Like Like, what? That's a bit far, Bruce. What's like, dial it back. Yeah, no, I when I'm writing, my favorite thing to write is stories about obsessive characters. I tend to fixate on things myself, and I love like characters that fixate on things where like the why are they doing this is because there's this compulsion kind of thing. Detectives that fixate on things in my crime novels is a big thing with me. So like Batman really like draws me in because of that, because it's this like fixation that draws him. Like in
Yeah.
some ways he is a little bit unhealthy. He's
Oh, yes,
channeling it
definitely.
into something healthy. He's channeling it into a good thing, but he is an unhealthy individual.
Oh, definitely. That's what I like about it, because it's so very dysfunctional in a functional way. Like, it's dark psychology at the core of it, Batman. That's what I love about it.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Like it. Good answer. Good answer. AF Stewart, if you were a jam, what kind of jam would you be?
Cherry.
And okay, why?
Because it's sweet and it's sour at the same time.
Okay. Getting a lot of that.
And it's red, and I guess I don't like red, but I like cherry red, which is strange.
Okay. Okay. I like it. I like it.
Also,
Cherry
I like
red's a
cherry.
nice color. Yeah, yeah. All right. Do you read any Stephen King?
Actually, I don't read horror,
Okay.
which is odd because I write it.
Nope.
But
That's
no,
fine.
I do. I like Stephen King, and I used to read his column that he had in the magazine. Oh, what was the magazine's name now? Oh, terrible! You get old, you forget. But yeah, he used to write a column in it. Oh, Entertainment Weekly. That's what it was. He used to write a column in Entertainment Weekly, and I used to read the column. So I mean, I like Stephen King's writing.
Okay.
And I've read his autobiography, which was
that was beautiful. Yeah.
yeah. And it's a wonder man survived to adulthood, actually. But
yeah. Makes sense.
but yeah, I have been thinking about stepping my toe in and reading a little of his less horrific stuff. But
Dark Tower. I wrote my thesis on it. I can't recommend Dark Tower enough. Dark Tower.
Yeah, that one kind of does appeal to me. So I may eventually read them. But yeah, it's so I'm too much of a chicken to actually read horror stuff. So
cool. AF Stewart, how did publishing your first book, if you can remember back when, change the process of writing for you? Did it at all?
It did kind of, because I published my first book, and then I got on. My first book was actually a poetry book. I just had a bunch of poems lying around, so I just put them in a collection and tried the self-publishing thing, because this was way back before Kindle, for Amazon, for KDP, before everything really.
Yep.
And then I found this website called gather.com, which doesn't exist anymore, unfortunately. And it was sort of like all these writers who were like me, just kind of starting out in the self-publishing or the small press world. And we sort of exchanged critiques and advice, and read each other's stuff and encouraged each other and stuff. So it did help my writing in that sense, because it kind of drew me into the writing community, the indie writing community, which has been wonderful.
Yeah, it's wonderful. We're both members of the Genre Writers of Atlantic Canada.
Yeah.
Which, if you are a genre writer in Atlantic Canada, please go join the Genre Writers of Atlantic Canada.
Yeah, one of my tribes. I have several of the writing tribes in various different avenues of what I do. So.
Gotcha. Okay. AF Stewart, what are you reading right now? No cheating, no trying to think of what sounds cool. Literally, what are you reading? What book are you in the middle of or starting right now?
Right now, I'm starting something called The Blood of the Lily by S.D. Houston.
Sounds cool.
That one, the blurb just caught me, and I bought it on the spot. It was Snow White and Rose Red meets Irish mythology. Okay.
That's not what I thought when I heard the title, but that's cool. All right.
Yeah, and I've just started, I'm a couple of chapters in, but yeah, it's really good so far. But it was just like that just clicked in my head, because I love the Snow White and Rose Red fairy tale, and Irish mythology is my thing. So I was like, yeah, gotta buy that. Click.
All right. Sounds good. Sounds awesome.
Yeah, and I'm also in the middle of reading Where All Is Night and Starless. I hope I got that title right, by John Wyndham Grant. He's a kind of a dark horror, weird occult writer. He's so good. And it's a short story collection, and they are just so good.
Okay. All right. I will check that out. That sounds awesome. Beautiful. AF Stewart, how many hours a day do you write? Or if you don't write in every day, like how long on average does it take you to finish a project?
It depends on what I'm writing. If I'm writing a short story, I can, it depends on if I get on a roll, I can finish that in a couple of weeks. If I'm writing a book, it probably take me a couple of months or so, unless of course I hit a snag like with my historical fantasy and realize I didn't outline the middle of it.
That's a problem.
It's like, yeah, I'm reading my scene outlines. Yeah, okay. Yeah, this happens. How does it happen? Those are the notes and the outline. It's like, yeah, okay, gotta start and figure out how this works now. And the research for that book was a lot more than I expected. So yeah, that one's taken a while.
Yeah, but that reminds me, for a while, like my greatest nemesis in life, I called Past Matt, because Past Matt always messed me over. Like who drank the last of the orange juice and didn't think to go get more? Past Matt. Who didn't outline the middle of that book? Past Matt. Like,
yeah, but yeah, because when I started this, it's historical Venice, right? 15th century Venice. And I thought I knew Venice, like Renaissance Venice, when I started it. Turns out I did not know anything.
Yeah.
Because that city's a lot more complex and complicated than I thought. And so, yeah, I've had to go and do a lot more research. So.
Yeah, as a lot of things are when you dig down deep. You know what I mean? Yeah. Okay, makes sense. I like it. On that note, AF Stewart, what is your writing kryptonite? What is something that if this thing happens, it just ends your writing productivity for the day? What's the thing that disrupts your writing?
Generally, if something comes up like a problem or frustration or, something annoys me, if I get annoyed or frustrated or upset, then generally I don't write well. It's like, because I got to work through the frustration before I can sit down and write. And so that just disrupts my process entirely. It's like, yeah, that's why I like to stay off Facebook when I'm writing. So
yeah, absolutely. Anything where there's the potential to encounter politics, I try to avoid. I tend to write for that reason very early in the morning. Like I'll get up and writing's the first thing I do. I know some people that write during the day or at night, but I have to write when I'm fresh before the frustrations of the day have had a chance to find me.
Yeah, I do that like when I'm doing NaNoWriMo, I generally try to do writing in the morning, but I generally need to have my coffee kick in before I start writing.
Yeah.
So, trouble is my muse tends to hit around midnight, so that can be a little frustrating because it's like, I want to go to bed. I need my sleep. Stop giving me ideas.
Yeah, that can be a problem for sure. Yeah. AF Stewart, are there any authors whose writing you disliked at first, but you later grew into or grew to like their writing?
I don't think so. Generally, if I dislike a writer, I dislike them permanently.
Okay. Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Because generally it's something about their style that bothers me.
Yep.
And so that's not going to change. So it's like, and I'll acknowledge that they're a good writer, because like John Grisham, he's a good writer. A lot of people like him, but I'm not overly fond of his stuff because it's a bit dry for my taste.
Neil Stephenson for me. I don't know why, but I acknowledge that he's a good writer, but I cannot read him. I've tried multiple times, and I don't know, something about his thing that he writes in won't fit into, like, he's a square peg and my brain's a round hole and it just will not mesh.
Yeah, there are some writers, it's like they're good writers, but they don't click with you for some reason.
Yep, makes sense. AF Stewart, how many unpublished or half finished books do you have? How many works in progress do you have in progress right now?
Okay, let me count.
Okay.
I've got 1, 2, 3. Oh, the fairy tales. I've got at least 10.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah, and they're varying different projects. Most of them, like I've got 2 fantasy novels that one steampunk, one fantasy novel, 1 fantasy novel that I started. Oh, then there's the 2 horror. I forgot the 2 horror novellas. I keep forgetting those.
Okay.
But so yeah, it's probably more like a dozen projects on the go at the moment.
Okay.
And they'll all get finished eventually. Because a lot of them are in like first drafts. So yeah.
Makes sense.
They just need to be edited. So
nice. Okay. Wait, you still count something as in progress if it's got a first draft done?
Yeah, because to me it's not finished until it's finished.
That's fair.
Editing. Because I tend to underwrite first drafts, so I'm usually going to be adding a lot of stuff to whatever I'm editing. So
makes sense. I don't consider it done, but I definitely remove it from that checkbox in my head. You know what I mean? Like it's okay, that part's done. Like yeah.
No, but with a first draft for me, if it's just like the bare bones, like the skeleton. I've got the skeleton done. Now I have to put the meat on it.
Okay. All right. Cool. Interesting how different people think of even just like the stages of work and stuff like that.
Because I know a lot of people with the first draft, they just, it's the first draft and then they start like a second draft. For me, it's just like the first draft keeps getting revised and revised and revised.
Yeah.
It's kind of always the first draft. It's just different versions of it.
That makes sense. Yep. Okay. Sounds good. Let's see. AF Stewart, what other authors do you know, and how do they help you become a better writer?
Actually, I know a lot of authors. They're all indie authors, but yeah, I mean they share their writing processes, which helps, different tools and different methods, and just reading them, it's like it's inspiring. It's like with like I mentioned John Linwood Grant. I mean, his stuff is it's almost literary in a way, but it's very lyrical and I'm trying to find the word here. It's beautiful in a dark way. So that kind of inspires me to do better. And it's just that's what the authors do. You read authors and they inspire you to do better.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, that's the whole point. Yeah, it's I don't want to say garbage, but it's the old garbage in, garbage out kind of thing. You read and then you produce, and then you read and then you produce, and that's just part of it. Yeah, for sure.
And it's nice to switch, to bounce out ideas off other authors too. Like if you're stuck, you just, okay, I've got this and I don't know what to do with it. Anyone got any suggestions? And then people will start throwing suggestions out, and then that just bounces a new idea in my head. So
yep, for sure, for certain. Cool. Where can people check out your work?
I'm wide, so you can find me on most retailers, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I'm on Chapters Indigo, Kobo. Almost forgot that one. And most of my books are in print as well, if you prefer paperbacks to ebooks. A couple of them are just ebooks only because they're very short. Like the Killers and Demons are only ebooks because the first Killers and Demons was like 5 stories. So I never bothered with the paperback on that one, and I just kept the ebook only as the series progressed. So
okay, sounds wonderful. Okay, thank you for joining us, AF Stewart. This is wonderful to have you on the program.
And that was a pleasure being here.
All right.
All right, well, thanks for coming on again. For all of you, we'll be here again next week at 4:30 Newfoundland time or online at chmr.ca. Please tune in and we'll talk more about writing culture in Newfoundland.